Hello and welcome to Star Diary, the podcast from the makers of BBC Sky at Night magazine. You can subscribe to the digital edition of the magazine by visiting iTunes, Google Play or Apple News, or to the print edition by visiting skyatnightmagazine.com.
Greetings, listeners, and welcome to Star Diary, a weekly guide to the best things to see in the Northern Hemisphere's night sky. As we are based here in the UK, all times are in GMT. In this episode, we'll be covering the coming week, from the 16th to the 22nd of December. I'm Ezzy Pearson, the magazine's features editor, and I'm joined on the podcast today by astronomer Mary McIntyre. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Ezzy. It's great to be back again.
We are rapidly running up to the end of the year, so what do we have to look forward to in this week's night skies?
We've got an evening planetary pageant with 6 planets visible at once in the evening sky, and the 7th one appears in the dawn sky. We've got the winter solstice this week and a couple of meteor showers and possibly still a telescopic comet.
Well, often talk about planetary parades, but I think this is my first planetary pageant. So shall we start there and see what's what?
Yeah, it's very unusual to have 6 planets all visible at once. Now, I know the press always go mad with stuff like this. Planets in a line. The planets are always in a line. They're in a line that follows the ecliptic. And also, they're not all in a line in the south. They're all going to be from the east all the way over to the west. So just clear that up. But if you scan from the east to the west, you will be able to see 6 planets at the same time in our evening sky. So talking about them in order of rise times, Venus is going to lie in Capricornus, and that is going to be very obvious over in the southwest after sunset, blazing away at mag minus 4.3. That is setting at 7:40 p.m. Now, there have been many times in the past I have photographed Venus against a backdrop and used it as a Christmas card. So have a look for that. We've got 2 stars that could possibly be Christmas stars in photographs if you are into sending Christmas cards via email or getting them printed. So look for that one this week in the southwest. And on Thursday, the 19th, it's going to lie very close to Theta Capricorni, just 1.5 degrees to the lower left of that. Saturn lies in Aquarius this week and is about 29 degrees above the southern sky as soon as it gets dark. That will remain visible until it sets at 10:30 p.m. and that is a lot fainter than Venus at mag +1, but +1 is still very easy to see even from fairly light polluted skies. We've got a couple of shadow transits on Saturn this week to look out for. There are always loads of shadow transits of the gas giants. We can't mention all of them, but this is a nice couple to have a look at. Monday the 16th, Rhea's shadow is going to transit Saturn. That's going to start in daylight at 3:37 p.m, but that will continue through until 7:21 when it'll definitely be dark by the time it finishes. And on Sunday the 22nd at 5:25 p.m. until 9:55 p.m, we've got the shadow of Titan crossing the disk of Saturn as well. Neptune lies about 14 degrees to the left of Saturn, located between Aquarius and Pisces, and that is going to be visible until 10 to midnight, mag +7.8, so you'll definitely need binoculars or a telescope to spot that. And Uranus lies between Aries and Taurus, and that's about 7 degrees to the right of the Pleiades, so it's still very close to the Pleiades, so that would be a good thing to help you find the planet if you've never seen it before. That stays visible until 5:20 in the morning, so it's kind of a pretty much all-night thing. At mag +5.7, you will need optical aids, but it will be easier to spot than Neptune. With both of those, if we've got really cold, clear skies, you may actually see a bit of colour. There's a quality about them that makes them just look a little bit different when you look closely. So if you do spot that patch of sky, just take a bit of time with it and don't rush. Just see a dot. Yeah, I've seen it. Just look at it for a while and see if you can actually perceive any of the colour there, because you can sometimes see that, particularly with a bigger telescope.
Or you can at least convince yourself that you can.
Just as important. Jupiter lies in Taurus, and again, Jupiter is absolutely unmissable at mag -2.8. That is in the east after dark. That reached opposition on Thursday the 7th, so that is going to be visible all night long, all month. 6:30 in the evening, it's going to basically be sitting over in the east, and the Christmas star was in the east as well. So that is like Christmas star number 2. If you've got a landmark near that side of the sky, again, really good opportunity to take a picture of a Christmas star that's actually way more exciting because it's Jupiter. But, you know, they are very photogenic when they're shining like that, especially in a twilight sky. Mars lies in Cancer this week. That rises in the northeast at about 6:40 p.m. and then remains visible all night long. That's around mag -1, and it's going to get even brighter next week. If you look on Tuesday, the 17th of December, Mars is just 7 degrees below the 92% waning moon. There's a special event on Wednesday, the 18th, and this time the moon is going to actually occult Mars, but this is going to happen in daylight. Ordinarily, you can only see the very bright planets in daylight, but Mars is going to be pretty bright this week. So although I doubt very much you're going to see anything of Mars with the naked eye, you will see the moon with the naked eye. If you point binoculars or a telescope at that, you should be able to see Mars. Mars will disappear behind the illuminated side of the moon at 9:25 in the morning. It's going to re-emerge again at 10:15. But it's going to emerge from the non-illuminated eastern limb. So keep watching. It won't pop out where you think it's going to, because there is a portion of the moon there that isn't illuminated. And that is where there's going to be like a gap between the moon and where Mars will appear again. I have actually photographed a daytime occultation of a planet. It was Venus, and I did it with just a 300mm zoom lens, no telescope. So I think this is achievable. It will be a challenge. I think all planetary occultations are a challenge, but it's definitely worth having a go at this. It's always great when we get the moon occulting a planet of some kind. And again, we already know that the planets are moving at a different rate to the stars. The moon is moving at yet another rate. So you do get this kind of cat and mouse thing going on. So that will be an awesome one to try to spot. Mercury lies in Scorpius this week, and that is rising before dawn at 6:20 in the morning. So that's about 2 hours before sunrise. So that's a good opportunity to spot Mercury. It's at mag 0, so it's nice and bright, but it will be very, very low down in the southeast. And now that it's visible a couple of hours before sunrise, just make sure that you look at it as soon as you can. And once you've seen it, don't risk looking at the rising sun with your binoculars. Can't emphasize that enough. This week, we have the Northern Hemisphere winter solstice. This takes place on Saturday, the 21st of December at 9:20 in the morning. And that is when Earth reaches its maximum tilt away from the sun. So that means that the sun is at its lowest elevation for us in the Northern Hemisphere. And that means we have the shortest day and the longest night. Of course, the word solstice comes from solstitium, meaning sun stands still. A couple of weeks ago, we mentioned about plotting the movement of a planet as it goes from prograde to retrograde. One thing that people do with the sun is take a picture of it at noon a couple of times a month all year round and produce something called an analemma. And the sun kind of marks out a sort of figure of 8 pattern. But at the solstices, it doesn't really change its altitude around local noon that much. So for most of the week, if you look at the sun at local noon when it's at its highest point, it's going to be the same height for 4 or 5 days. And that is where the sun stands still actually comes from. So that's where the name solstice is actually derived. So once we get past that, we will start going back to having longer days and shorter nights again. And that makes me really sad because I actually love it when it's dark in the evenings and we have long nights. But we've got a way to go yet.
It'll take some time. You've got some time before, the sun starts coming out again.
But yeah, the reason there's an exact time on that rather than the whole day is because it's a very specific point where the Earth is at a tilt. It's not necessarily relating to the whole day and the sun standing still. There's a couple of different definitions of it, and the way that you look at it is slightly different depending on how you're defining what the solstice is. So that's why there's a very specific time rather than just the full day. Comet C2023 A3 Soosten-Chan Atlas is still moving through Aquila this week. It's moving through a part of the Milky Way and is visible until it sets at 8:15 in the evening. It's predicted to fade down to mag plus 10.5 this month, so it is going to be very much more challenging than it was a couple of months ago. From Wednesday this week, the moon is going to be out of the way, so it's definitely a good time to try to spot this before it gets too faint to be observed by your equipment. And the Geminids meteor shower is actually active from the 4th till the 20th. The peak was actually overnight on the 13th and 14th, but we may still see a couple of late Geminids the first half of this week, especially once the moon kind of gets out of the way a little bit. It doesn't have a particularly broad peak, but you may still get a few stragglers, so that's definitely worth looking for. The other meteor shower that's active this week is a minor shower called the Ursids, and this is from debris left behind by Comet 8P Tuttle. The meteors from this debris stream are travelling at 33 kilometres per second. The radiant of this one is in Ursa Minor, so it's very, very high in the sky. But although this shower is actually active from the 17th to the 25th of December, the peak of it is extremely narrow. The debris stream of this is very, very narrow, so all the peak activity really happens on Sunday, the 22nd of December. So it's definitely worth going out and having a look that night. It's always worth observing meteor showers a night before or after as well, because you never know if the debris field has moved, or a no-show is still an important observation with meteor showers. But yeah, it's not a particularly prolific shower. If I'm remembering, I think it's around 10 per hour, but they are still nice meteors. And so if you do see more meteors than normal, it could be attributed to the Geminids or the Ursids. Finally, the International Space Station is returning for some nice high and bright passes before dawn this week, and I'm going to talk about why we can utilise that to our advantage in next week's show. So that's it for this week.
Well, thank you very much for taking us through that. As ever, you always manage to find lots and lots of things to see in the night sky. We will be back next week for our episode that will be going over the week of Christmas. So maybe there'll be some really interesting Christmas observations that we can make in that week. If you want to be sure to catch that episode, please subscribe to the podcast and we'll be back next week. Until then, to summarize this week again, we have 6 planets visible at once in the evening sky throughout the week, and the moon will be moving from full to last quarter. On Monday the 16th, Ganymede and its shadow will transit the planet Jupiter, while the shadow of the moon Rhea will transit across Saturn. And you can also look out for some late Geminids as well. On Tuesday the 17th, Mars will be below the 92% waning moon. On Wednesday the 18th of December, there'll be a daytime lunar occultation of Mars, which is a bit of a challenge, but hopefully you'll be able to see something. On Tuesday, the 19th, look for Venus as it lies to the lower left of Theta Capricorni. On Friday the 20th, look for Comet A3 in Aquila now that the moon is out of the way. On the 21st, it will be the Northern Hemisphere's winter solstice. And finally, on Sunday the 22nd, Titan's shadow will transit Saturn, whilst the Ursids meteor shower reaches its peak. From all of us here at Sky at Night magazine, goodbye. If you want to find out even more spectacular sights that will be gracing the night sky this month, be sure to pick up a copy of BBC Sky at Night magazine, where we have a 16-page pull-out sky guide with a full overview of everything worth looking up for throughout the whole month. Whether you like to look at the moon, the planets, or the deep sky, whether you use binoculars, telescopes, or neither, our Sky Guide has got you covered, with detailed star charts to help you track your way across the night sky. From all of us here at BBC Sky at Night magazine, goodbye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Star Diary podcast from the makers of BBC Sky at Night magazine. For more of our podcasts, visit our website at skyatnightmagazine.com/podcasts or head to Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite podcast player.